Ukrainian drones struck Russia's Novorossiysk naval base, dodging missiles, radar, and jammers, causing a massive industrial explosion. Modern drone warfare changes everything.
August 24th, 6:10 a.m. Black Sea, off Novorossiysk in Russia's Krasnodar region. The sky was still covered in fog. A group of 15 Ukrainian attack drones quietly appeared on coastal radar screens, flying in low formation, heading toward the naval base that Russia considers impregnable in the south. After a journey of nearly 960 kilometers through the night, their engines were hot, with only the end of their fuel tanks left. In the distance, a faint signal showed a reconnaissance USV running alongside, maintaining a long-range data link, but not a single one turned around. Everything seemed normal, until a Russian patrol boat appeared in the thick fog of the Black Sea morning. The ship slid out of the fog like a steel ghost, carrying a slow-rotating Podlet K-1 radar. Suddenly, the lead formation of UAVs jerked sharply to the right as electromagnetic interference flared off the sea surface. They had been spotted. The 14.5mm machine gun on the Russian ship roared, tearing through the cold, humid air. Shots swept through the formation, flying so close that the pressure wave from the bullets shook the UAVs violently. One grazed the wing, leaving a black burn mark on the carbon fiber. But these machines had no pilots. Only the operators were watching a grainy black and white screen in bunkers near Riga, thousands of kilometers from the battlefield. On the surface of the Black Sea, 3 missiles lifted off the launchers of Russian patrol boats, trailing white flames, whistling through the mist. They were Igla-S, shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles originally designed to shoot down helicopters. The reaction of the UAVs was almost instinctive. They scattered like a flock of sparrows, the formation breaking up and then reforming. Some climbed high, touching the clouds. Others dove low to the surface of the Black Sea. The Russian radar saw dozens of flickering signals, no longer able to distinguish between real targets and mirages. In the chaos of signals, the technician reported several high-speed streaks that could be FPVs, small dots moving erratically across the screen. One missile lost lock, spun wildly and plunged into the Black Sea, near the shores of Novorossiysk. The second exploded harmlessly in midair, its proximity fuse triggered by empty space. But the third missile did not miss. It picked up the heat signature of the last UAV in the formation, tore through the cold mist, turning it into a brief fireball that dissipated into the waves. The remaining 14 quickly regrouped, changed altitude, and then kept a southeasterly course, heading toward Russia's strategic port of Novorossiysk, now only 40 kilometers ahead. At that moment, the S-400 appeared on the screen, its giant tombstone radar, silent for several minutes, suddenly lit up, switching from searching to locking on. On the screen, the dim dots turned into a glowing red menace. But this was no commercial UAV. It was the UJ-26, a stealthy autonomous weapon built to rip through any air defenses Russia once believed impenetrable. In the cockpit, the crew understood. The game of predators had changed. Russian technicians are about to understand why their multi-billion-dollar air defense system is terrified of $35,000 UAVs. As soon as the UJ-26s are in range, the S-400 begins to light them. A 3 GHz radar beam is fired, scanning the Black Sea, waiting for the signal to be reflected back. On the screen, bright spots blink. Imagine radar working like sonar, but using radio waves instead of sound. The problem is that the UJ-26s are made of fiberglass and carbon, which reflects only about 10% of the radar energy of their metal bodies. From an altitude of 40 kilometers, they are so small on the screen that they look like seagulls. The operator can't lock onto the target reliably, so he tries something clever, tracking with rocket fire pre-fire to force the target to self-illuminate on a reflective trajectory. The complex responds by using the missile seeker to send data back to the system, and 248 N6DMS leave the launch pad. Each costs approximately $2 million, built to hit targets worth hundreds of millions. But here, physics is on Ukraine's side. As the missiles soar, the UJ-26 dive, hugging the surface of the Black Sea, just 10 meters above the wavefront. In the fog and noise, they become invisible dots on the display. The radar has to contend with sea noise and the radar horizon. Some Russian infrared scanning sensors even mistook the heat plume of the falling low-altitude FPV as a target signal. Two 48 N6DMs tried to follow, diving down at an angle of nearly 70 degrees. But their control surfaces worked like airplane wings. They needed airflow to steer. At that steep angle, the air was thin, the flow was broken, the rudders stalled. Both missiles lost stability, plunging into the Black Sea like steel spears, exploding in the salt mist. Immediately, the S-400 crew changed tactics. They deployed the 9M96E2, a new missile equipped with an aerodynamic booster, small side-firing jets that allowed it to change direction 90 degrees even without airflow. At the command center, a Podlet K-1 secondary radar was also activated to assist in low-level acquisition, increasing the chance of locking on a close-range target. These missiles were different. They generated a rotational force of up to 60 G, diving down to the height of the wave, closely following the UAV's reflected signal. The lead UJ-26 banked hard to the left to avoid it, but the missile's computer had already calculated the intercept point and adjusted. 3 seconds before impact, 2 seconds later, the warhead exploded, sending more than 200 tungsten fragments tearing through the air. The UAV was hit, shattered into hundreds of carbon fiber pieces, falling to the surface of the Black Sea, black ash blending with the dawn light. A second missile found its target, tearing apart another UAV, but that hit created a new problem. Fragments flew through the air, reflecting radar waves everywhere, turning the 13 real signals into hundreds of fake signals. The Russian crew's screens lit up. It was no longer possible to distinguish between the target and the burning carbon fiber. The remaining 13 UJ-26s spread out. Some flew up, others dived, some turned left, some turned right. The Russian air defense system had seen this before, and they thought they were ready. 4 Pantsir-S complexes were arranged in overlapping fire lines, forming what they called a box of death. No matter which direction the UAV flies, it will be caught in the crossfire zone. Pantsir is specifically designed to counter this type of threat, combining short-range missiles with a 30mm cannon, intercepting them in the last few seconds. Think of them as soccer goalkeepers, the last line of defense, where even the slightest mistake could mean disaster. Each Pantsir-S system operates on a completely different philosophy than the S-400. No mass firing, no waste. They use a shoot, observe, shoot again tactic. Launch one, track the trajectory, adjust, then launch again. This tactic maximizes accuracy when confronting a highly maneuverable target. The first battery locks onto the advancing UJ-26 formation, then fires. A 57 E6, worth more than $180,000, rockets off the launcher straight at the lead vehicle. But the UAVs reacted instantly. They spun around each other like a merry-go-round rolling forward. Each one changed direction at different intervals, creating geometric chaos that confused the missile's guidance system. The 57 E6's proportional guidance mechanism predicted linear motion. But as the angle of inclination kept changing, the interception algorithm got confused and missed the lock. The Pantsir gunner switched to the 30mm twin-barrel cannon, which could fire 5,000 rounds per minute. Instead of aiming at each UAV, he drew a block of space in lead, creating a wall of death that anything flying through would be torn to pieces. 4 UAVs entered the area. Only 2 survived and penetrated the barrage of bullets. The math is brutal but simple. Only 9 UAVs remain. Nearly a dozen Russian missiles have left their tubes. Hundreds of rounds have been fired, and they haven't reached the port yet. Red warning lights flash across the Krasnodar region command center, signaling simultaneous encounters at Belgorod, Rostov, and Bryansk. Other groups of 14 UAVs are still simultaneously attacking in the designated direction. All anti-aircraft batteries are on combat alert. No reinforcements are coming. The Russians are on their own here, and so are the UAVs. The 9 survivors continue to advance, knowing the hardest part is still ahead. On the beach, a mobile container that looks like a cargo box. It's the Kraska 4, a plain-looking shell but containing high-altitude electronic jamming equipment inside. But inside that cargo was a $20 million jammer. As the remaining 9 UAVs entered the Novorossiysk area, the system activated. The entire radio spectrum was flooded with electromagnetic noise. Kraska 4 works by overwhelming the communication frequency with jamming waves, blocking any remaining control channels. Imagine trying to make a call while someone turns on a loudspeaker right next to your ear. The sound disappears, leaving only noise. The transmitter scans the 1.2 to 5.8 gigahertz band, hunting for a control signal connecting the operator 1,000 kilometers away and the incoming swarm. Meanwhile, the sea surface sensors also picked up some strange reflections, possibly debris. possibly USVS scouting offshore, adding to the noise in the air defense system. The EW specialists perform a scan, then lock, a quick scan of the entire spectrum for live signals. When they find one, they focus all their jamming power on it, not making noise everywhere, but hitting the right spot. In a few seconds, they narrow down the main frequency band, 2.4 gigahertz, the main link between the aircraft and the operator. Krasika 4 aims its power beam at around 20 watts, creating a wall of electromagnetic interference. But the beavers aren't controlled by a single wave. They hop between 128 channels every second in a pseudo-random pattern. Only the operator knows the sequence. Think of it as if you were switching phone numbers mid-call. If you don't know the sequence, you can't keep up. In theory, jamming could paralyze communications, but the Russians turned to the burn the haystack approach, mass jamming, stuffing every frequency band with noise. The idea was simple. If you can't find a needle in a haystack, burn the haystack. Every channel is overwhelmed. Every path is blinded by electromagnetic noise. However, a broken link is no longer the end. The UAVs immediately go into autonomous mode. They use terrain contour matching, comparing altitude readings from radar with preloaded terrain maps. Every hill, every bridge, every port has its coordinates in memory. When the remote signal disappears, they still know exactly where they are and continue moving towards the target. Automation brings advantages, but also new risks. The 3 UAVs don't have time to adjust when a construction crane suddenly rises from the fog. A structure not on the map loaded 6 months ago. It's too late to turn. The collision happens in a flash. Carbon fiber meets steel. Always a violent outcome. Shattered fuselages, falling wings, fire and debris strewn across the ocean surface. The remaining 6 continue. Batteries show 18% remaining. The math becomes life or death. Enough power to reach the target, but not enough for complex evasive maneuvers on the approach. They have only one chance to complete the mission. And there, the S-400 commander faces an impossible decision. Each remaining missile, $2 million each, is built to destroy a target worth 100 times more fire now, or hold. A single mistake could cost an entire base. Each UAV that crashes into your defense zone costs you $35,000. Even if you shoot them all down, the financial damage is still on Russia. This is no longer traditional warfare. It's economics with explosives attached. The commander decides to switch to a cheap and effective measure, deploying Zu-23 anti-aircraft guns. The 23mm twin-barrel guns are from the 1960s, crude, noisy, but the ammunition is only about $3 a pound. Hit or shatter, same result. The problem is that the Zu-23 needs a human eye to aim. These guns rely on optical observation. Someone has to see the target to give the order to fire. The UAV, meanwhile, only travels at 150 kilometers per hour, performing sudden turns every 2 to 4 seconds. The classic sighting system needs about 3 seconds of stable flight to calculate a firing solution, but the target never gives them that time. The gunners are forced to return to World War II tactics, scattering flares across the sky, hoping to hit something. A stray round, but fortunately hits a rotating UAV, ripping its fiberglass hull apart. The other 5 continue on. Novorossiysk port is only 8 kilometers away. But this is the true nature of modern warfare. Sometimes, man-made weapons are not the only thing you have to fear. As the UAVs approached the port, the water temperature rose, causing a thin layer of fog to rise. What had once protected them now betrayed them. In a few minutes, the battlefield turned into a white maze, where multi-million-dollar sensors were completely blinded. Visibility dropped to 30 meters. The Russians could not see the UAVs. The UAVs could not see the port. Everyone was fighting in the dark. The Pantsir thermal sensors, which could detect targets at 5 kilometers, were now powerless. The fog scattered infrared radiation like light. Even heat dissipated in the fog. Detection range drops to about 200 meters. Air defenses switch to area saturation mode. They no longer hunt individual targets, but instead erect firewalls at GPS coordinates and fire blindly at the anticipated approach corridors. 5 Ukrainian UAVs descend 3 meters above the Black Sea, their radar altimeters pinging repeatedly to avoid the waves. Frost coats the lens. Every video stream becomes a useless blur. Operators in Ukraine, looking through the satellite data link, see only gray noise. They now fly entirely on GPS coordinates, trusting numbers more than feelings. Frustrated by their lack of hits, the Russians turn on GPS spoofing. powerful transmitters that broadcast fake coordinates, drowning out the real satellite signals. The technique is overlaying, sending out a stronger fake signal to make the GPS receiver trust the fake location. Imagine your car's navigation system telling you you're in another city. Two UAVs follow fake coordinates, tilt sharply to the right, and then dive straight into the water. Fooled by a location that doesn't exist. Splashing water in the fog. The only thing on the screen was the radar signals that flashed and disappeared. The three remaining UAVs were hidden in the fog, just a short scan, and then they were gone. The backup inertial guidance system kept them on track, compensating for GPS errors. Simple math to navigate through the fog. The harbor guards, the rooftop guards, and watchtowers were equipped with shoulder-mounted IGLAs. These guns used cooled infrared seekers that could see heat radiation in the 3 to 5 micrometer range, where the flames and engines were brightest. Now the battle was on the last minute. 3 low targets, low batteries, and a whole array of sensors from human eyes to heat detectors waiting for that moment. The human eye sees only in the 4 to 7 micron range, but the IGLA's probe penetrates deeper into the infrared, detecting temperature differences as small as 0.5 degrees Celsius. The problem is that the Beaver's tiny 20 horsepower engine is only 40 degrees Celsius hotter than the surrounding air. In the warm mist of the Black Sea, they are virtually invisible. The Russians lie in ambush, waiting until they hear the mini propellers whirring overhead, then fire from behind, where the exhaust heat is strongest. One missile hits its target. The proximity fuse detonates 5 meters from the UAV. Shrapnel ripping through the composite body and control wiring, the Beaver dives, exploding in the hangar. The other two continue on, weaving between 40-meter-high fuel tanks, while overhead, an Mi-8 roars by, its gunner spraying PKM rounds into the dark shadows in the mist. The helicopter pilot tried to use the wind, lowering the altitude, using the airflow from the propeller to create a 60 km/h wind, hoping to knock the UAV into the tank wall. The wind waves hit the steel, but also blew away the fog, opening up the view for a few seconds. In that brief moment, on the screen of the control team in Ukraine, the image of the target appeared clearly. The giant cryogenic processing complex of the Novorossiysk port, lying motionless ahead. The Novorossiysk complex's automatic safety system detected the approaching object. The threat assessment algorithms, which were programmed to prevent collisions with civilian aircraft, immediately switched to emergency mode. The siren resounded throughout the port. The emergency vent valve opened, releasing thousands of cubic meters of methane and ethane to reduce pressure in case the tank was breached. An invisible cloud of flammable gas begins to spread throughout the facility, just waiting for a small spark to become a massive fuel-air explosion. The defense forces have unwittingly created the perfect conditions for destruction. Industrial water trucks rush to the blocking points. Technicians attempt to shoot down the UAVs with high-pressure water jets. This is no ordinary fire hose. These industrial devices can penetrate wooden walls at a distance of 50 meters. One UAV hits the water column. The pressure snaps its propeller blades like a dry branch. It crashes to the concrete floor, the warhead intact, but harmless. The last Beaver adjusts its course, its thermal camera locking onto the signature heat signature of the cryogenic facility. The mission is down to the last second. Minus 163 degrees Celsius, the lowest temperature mark on the entire map. The operator switches to manual control via Iridium satellite, accepting a 2-second delay, enough to make navigation at this distance nearly impossible. 12% battery left, about 90 seconds of flight time. The UJ-26 Suicide UAV winds through a maze of pipes and towers, each turn a gamble with time. Each turn burns precious energy. Security forces fire at the sound, rifles, pistols, bullets hitting steel, sparking like metallic rain. A battery pack bursts, interrupting the data transmission. The operator flies only by estimate and memory of the map. 10 seconds to target, 5 seconds. Battery critically low, engines losing power, but momentum will carry at the last leg. The last Beaver made its way through the refinery's 3-dimensional maze of pipes and pedestrian bridges. Its civilian GPS, accurate to plus or minus 5 meters under ideal conditions, was now off by 30 meters due to reflections, and spoofing metal surfaces reflected the signal, throwing the navigation system off course, while the Russian spoof grew stronger by the second. But the UAV continued on, by inertia, not by signal. The controller in Ukraine was tracking over a 2 kilobit Iridium channel, A few lines of raw data: altitude 3 meters, speed 40 kilometers per hour, battery 8%, heading 285 degrees, no video, no radar, just numbers flashing every 2 seconds as the UAV crawled slowly toward its final coordinates. The 2-second delay made the control a blind operation. Every action was too late by the time it arrived. When he gave the command to turn left, the UAV flew another 20 meters before receiving the signal. He had to fly by prediction, imagining where it would be, not where it was, like playing a video game with a 2-second delay. Amid the strobes, a frame flashed. A giant cylindrical tower, silver-plated pipes, warning signs in Cyrillic, and the cryogenic separation unit, the heart of the complex, where the condensate was divided into its most valuable components. Below, security forces deployed the final line of defense. 1738. Multiple industrial water jets were mounted on the truck, forming a mobile wall between the UAV and the factory. A gunner used acoustic sensors to pick up the direction of the engine noise, leading the target like a claymore shooter. The water jet hit the tail of the UAV, causing it to spin violently. The gyroscope struggled to maintain balance. The engine roared at full power, draining the last of its energy. The battery warning flashed, 5%. The operator knew he had only one chance. He lowered the UAV's nose, converting altitude into speed, and dove for the target's feet. The air below had been turned by the emergency ventilation system into an invisible methane-ethane cloud, a perfect fuel mixture waiting for a spark. The 20-kilogram warhead contained a thermite mixture, aluminum powder plus iron oxide, that reacted at over 2,500 degrees Celsius. Thermite isn't smothered by water or foam. Once it's started, it burns until it runs out of fuel, hot enough to melt steel in seconds. The impact decoy is mechanical, simple, and requires no electronics. 3 seconds to impact. Battery dead. Engine shut down. But inertia has spoken. The 40-kilogram UAV is hurtling at 15 meters per second, carrying a lot of momentum. It glides the last 50 meters in an eerie silence, a Newtonian bullet. Security forces hold their breath, hoping it will miss or fall short, but it doesn't stop. It hits the segmented column, just where the operator had aimed. Steel screeches, a loud crackle of metal on metal. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the thermite ignited. The blue-white flame flared up like a miniature sun, engulfing the steel column in 2 seconds. The liquefied metal sprayed straight into the pressure vessel, vaporizing the liquid hydrocarbon. The pressure spiked, rupturing the entire network of pipes, releasing thousands of cubic meters of flammable gas into the air. The gas cloud ignited. The explosion spread at 3,000 meters per second, creating a crushing shockwave that blew out every window within a kilometer radius. A 200-meter-high fireball rose from the morning mist, dyeing the Black Sea sky a fiery orange. But that was just the beginning. The liquid tanks below started a chain reaction. A BLEVE was forming. When the pressurized gas cylinders suddenly decompress, they expand to 600 times their volume, creating a terrifying explosion. One cylinder burst, the others followed, a chain reaction of destruction that turned the entire complex into a sea of fire. The $2 billion cryogenic processor, designed to withstand earthquakes and hurricanes, collapsed into a pile of twisted molten metal. The fire burned for 6 days, visible from satellites flying over the Black Sea and along the Georgian and Turkish coasts. A column of black smoke rose from the port industrial zone, marking Ukraine's deepest incursion into Russia's southern military zone. And in the final silence, the flames spoke for themselves. Goodbye.